Hello my friends. Before we start today's video, I want to say that I do not condone gambling. It often leads people to ruining their lives. However, today's video is about a historical form of gambling in Africa because, well, gambling is a form of game, and as some of you may know, I'm quite the gamer, from Mario to Azure Dreams. So I always find it interesting to learn about historical games, and most recently I learned of an African game called Abbia, and I thought I'd share that discovery with you. This game was played primarily by the Beti people of Cameroon who live in the area around the capital city of Yaoundé. Before the Germans came to Cameroon in the 1800s, Beti society was traditionally governed by several thousand headmen who often acted independently of one another, though some worked together if they were bound in alliance of friendship, kinship, or marriage. The Beti people lived in small groups with their own headmen and practiced hunting and small-scale farming. Due to the dangerous disease-carrying tsetse flies, they only carried a few household animals. A number of traditional Beti arts, including masks and statues, mostly disappeared after the Germans banned certain cultural practices around 1910. Fortunately, one older Beti man informed historians of terrifying masks which were used in initiation rites that marked a boy's transition from youth to warrior. According to historian Frederick Quinn, this ceremony was called So, which means antelope. Now, despite reading that these Beti So masks disappeared more than 100 years ago, I still wanted to try and find one online. And, well, I literally only found one image claiming to be one of these So masks. It was on an auction house website called Deroute. Do I think this is in fact an example of one of these lost masks? Well, frankly, I don't know. It certainly does have antelope-esque horns, but its face is a lot more pleasant looking than what I was expecting. In fact, the exact words of that old Beti man to describe these masks was that they were terrible to see. But look at this little guy, he's got a little smile. He ain't terrible at all. So that puts a lot of doubt on this being an actual So mask.
More importantly, though, I'd just rather not put my full faith into a .com website. Yes, I know auction houses hire experts to verify the authenticity of the artworks, but I've seen them mess up before, so until I see a Beti So mask on a museum website or a university website, I will remain skeptical about whether this is the real deal.
So it seems that we might not ever know what one of these masks look like. Colonizing Germans. Luckily, the main art form of today's video did survive the German colonizers. On screen now are what's known as Abbia tokens, or Abbia stones. These were gaming pieces used in a traditional form of gambling. These oval-shaped pieces are 4 to 5 centimeters long and were carved with different designs and used for playing the popular game Abbia. Although they were called stones, they were actually made from the hard pits of a fruit that grew on the elan tree. The Beti do not eat these fruits because they are deadly poisonous, so instead the Beti people, typically women and children, go into the forest and only bring back the pits. The fruits are not brought back since they could accidentally kill the domestic animals. Those who gathered these elan pits sold them to the Abbia players for 2 small iron staffs per pit. Then the player would break the seed in half with a hatchet and would begin to carve designs into these pieces with a knife or some other tool. Although players were normally expected to carve their own Abbia stones, not every player did. Those who were not skilled at carving could ask a friend or someone with a reputation as a skilled carver and commission a set of stones to be made for them. In this scenario, it was typically the carver and not the player that decided the designs etched onto the stones. Since Abbia pit carving was not considered a profession, it was rare to purchase these pits pre-carved. If one did find these tokens for sale, it was likely because sometimes a player lost big time and decided to sell his Abbia tokens. The designs on the pits come from all aspects of life. They can depict humans, animals, objects, supernatural beings, activities, and more. Examples include scenes of hunting, working, cultural ceremonies, domestic life, drumming, boating, palm trees, antelopes, birds, snakes, lizards, fish, horses, geometric symbols,
and of course every historian's favorite, good old Sonic and Knuckles. What? This is totally real. It's Sonic fan art circa 1872. What, you think Sonic didn't exist back then? Like, open your mind, man, for Sonic the Hedgehog transcends the feeble constraints of your limited temporal perceptions, dude.
Though the game can be played with undecorated tokens without affecting the gameplay, most players wanted to have their pieces carved. These are not just simple game dice, but characteristic artistic expressions that were and still are important to the heritage of South Cameroon's population. Besides their use for the game, Abbia tokens are also ideograms and pictograms that sometimes were, like many other traditional dice in the world, related to divinatory practices. Now that we've covered all that, let's finally talk about the game itself. When playing Abbia, men sat in a circle and placed their tokens in a container, which was typically a woven basket, but if that was not available, a calabash or hat would suffice. Besides the tokens, there were also special discs at play, which were cut from a calabash peel and whose only decoration was a simple X carved on one side. Unlike the tokens, the discs did not belong to any of the players, but were instead used to determine whose tokens were winners. 2 or more players could participate, and there always had to be a neutral arbiter involved. Said neutral arbiter was an experienced player in the game. He was both the judge of the game's results and the one who lifts the basket and throws it to the ground upside down. After the Abbia dice is tossed and covered by the basket, the players place their bets with iron rods. The rules of Abbia, as described in the document Abbia Stones by Frederick Quinn, are written in a kinda obtuse manner in my opinion, and though part of me wants to rewrite it in my own words for the sake of clarity, I think that it'd be better for me to just do a direct quote here to ensure that I'm not misinterpreting something. When the basket is removed, the positions of the 7 discs indicate who has won. If there are 6 Abbia stones and 7 discs in the basket, and 2, 3, or 4 of the stones lie with the carving on top, and 2 or 3 of the discs also lie with their backs up, then you know that the stones with the carved side up are the winners. The ones with the carved side down have lost. If one stone goes the same way as all 7 discs, then it wins. If one stone goes one way and all the other discs and stones go the other way, then you know that the stone that went its way alone has won, and all the others have lost. If 2 stones and all of the discs go one way, then you know that just these have lost. When all of the discs and stones lie on their backs, the throw is invalid. So to summarize, the game's win conditions depend on whether the tokens land on heads or tails and how they relate to the positions of the 7 discs. Now, as I said at the start of this video, gambling can ruin people's lives, and despite Abbia's popularity, many Betty disapproved of it. One quote from a Betty man about the game goes as follows: "With the Abbia game, it is like this. Reasonable people do not play it, only those who are out to steal. For when somebody has lost all his possessions in the Abbia game, then his heart thinks only about stealing. That is the reason why all the other people do not like the game." Some of the things that could be gambled with in Abbia include palm wine, bags of salt, tools like a machete, or livestock like a goat. However, the stakes could get much higher. One could lose their house, their farm, and even their wives and children. Yet, despite how hazardous this game could be, among modern Cameroonians there seems to be a nostalgia for Abbia. Though this gambling game is no longer played, the visual art it created can still be admired as compelling cultural artifacts that survived colonialism. And perhaps that's why Cameroon's University of Yaoundé uses an Abbia token as a symbol for its school. Actually, I don't really need to say perhaps, because there is literally a whole article online explaining why the university uses an Abbia token as its icon. The author of the article is Dr. Paul Henry Souvenir Asiko, and he is the head of the Fine Arts and Art History section of the University of Yaoundé. He writes that the modern society in Cameroon needs to build its own identity, and reclaiming the icons of the country's history, which the European colonialists sought to erase, is an important part of building that identity. The article also
also names the creator of the logo, Engelbert Mavang, who was not only an artist, but was also a Jesuit priest, historian, writer, and anthropologist. And like the Abbia tokens of old, this logo also has an image within it. It features an abstract geometric representation of 4 people arranged around a table. The article does not go into detail for why this was the imagery chosen, but art, especially modern art, tends to invite its viewers to interpret its meaning. So my interpretation is that the 4 people encircling the table are representing 2 scenes simultaneously. It is both a depiction of 4 men playing the historical game Abbia, and it is also 4 university students studying together, showing us in one image Cameroon's past and present. Thank you all for watching, and if you like how we do things here, please remember to click that like button because it helps out a lot, and please also click the subscribe button so you can watch some more African educational content.